So that event took place in France that I was talking about, but these are California poets and these are California wines, and I think that's something that we can celebrate, Our first poet, Rachel Richardson, is a Berkeley native, and in fact she went to Berkeley High. Woo! Represent! She's also a continent crosser. After Dartmouth, she came back here to accept the Stegner Fellowship at Stanford University, and then went back east to get a master's in folklore from the University of North Carolina. On all these travels, Rachel's also been carrying a set of Southern roots with her. These roots, which are set in the lowlands of Louisiana, sink down and plumb rich terrain in her first book, Copperhead. Mysterious, unmarriageable men, magical road signs, floods, snakes, lead belly, all converge and rise, smoking clear off the page, glazed in luminous yellow light. I shut my eyes, the river's edge sparked, and the snake came, she writes, inventing both snake and venom. Richardson's conjurings are steeped in underground culture that fills them with acid and spice. She's a collector and a documentarian, and she's aged her collections in a remarkable oak so they come out transformed, alchemically gold.
So the wine you're tasting right now is called Starmont. This is a Sauvignon Blanc. It is a fantastic example of 2010 vintage Napa Valley. When we talk about Sauvignon Blanc, what makes Sauvignon Blanc so great is its deep roots. In most cases, you're growing it near the riverbed because it wants to go downward. And in many cases, it'll have 100-foot deep as far as the roots go. And so it's hitting soils that are down there that you can't see on the top surface. And I think that's what's great about Rachel's works is that they really hit those kinds of things that are under there. There's this underbelly to her works. There's this, when I first started reading her stuff, I thought about, "Oh brother, where art thou?" But as one of the sirens. Not all of them, just one. And she was kind of out on her own today and writing these poems and kind of conjuring up words, and she was doing all of this. And because of the connection with the South, this is a great wine that would also go wonderful with some wonderful salmon or different fish that's down there in the Gulf Stream, especially prawns. And it's a good one because what's great about Sauvignon Blanc is it's so good when it's young, vibrant, and that is so Rachel. And you're gonna get that out of her. It's also got that little bit of Bayou magic spice in there. But it's going to be a lot of fun. This is as far as the layering of this wine too. It's not 100% Sauvignon Blanc. It's got 20% Semillon in it, which is much more of an old classic tradition of France. It's got a little bit of the mysterious Muscat clone, which is a part of Sauvignon Blanc kingdom. And it's just got great acidity. There is a little bit of oak in here. That's why it's smooth and almost kind of creamy texture on the mouth. But it's young and vibrant, and so is Rachel. So. Yeah.
Thank you, Christopher. Now I have to be vibrant and mysterious up here. Well, thank you all for being here, and thank you, Tess and Hollie, for inviting me. This is really exciting, a really lovely event. So, as Christopher said, and Tess too, my book is set in northern Louisiana, where half of my family is from, and I was kind of afraid, Christopher, that you'd prepare my reading with muscadine wine, but this is a much more sophisticated choice, so I appreciate it. I was hoping for some of those sort of senses of mystery and senses of the predatory intermingled with that wonderful richness of place, which is what I feel about Louisiana and why I'm drawn to writing about it. That lush beauty of both environment and culture, as well as some of the entwined troubling parts of the place. Children born after the war. Somewhere on the road is everything you want. Cantaloupe, okra, roast peanuts overflowing their bags, muscadine jelly and moonshine syrup, each in a heavy glass jar. Everything rises, mayhaw choked by cane. Thank your rubber tires and the smooth coins in your palm. Thank your grandfather and his battalions of boys. The road here to Tulsa is lined with track, and each bright fruit you tongue out of its shell comes as if on air, no trace of origin, no thorn. Second poem I'll read is called Portrait of Leadbelly in Pinstriped Suit. I assume most of you know who Leadbelly is. He was very popular in the 30s and 40s. His name actually is Huddie Ledbetter, and he was imprisoned for a while, twice, 2 separate stays at Angola, which is the main maximum security prison in Louisiana, also known as the Farm, and they required hard labor. So this poem deals with some of that and some of the deep roots and rich soil that Christopher was talking about. 2 lines in the poem also are songs that Leadbelly sang. One of them is from Amazing Grace, and one of them is from his song, Cotton Fields. You'll hear them. Portrait of Leadbelly in Pinstriped Suit. In the distance, wild blue cane, the fugitive strain, he bows in them old cotton fields back home. Angola, 12-bar blues, fiber thick in his fist, and the law cuts him deals, leads him in and out of farms. The bull is parenthesis, the weevil his voice. And the city takes him back, in soot-stained arms, furnace breath, to joints he shakes like the devil has shimmied up inside his leather boot. Blue cane in 10-foot topsoil, where no man dares plow. Because one day he'll raise his head against the whip, smile at the overseer, swear his name's Mr. Ledbetter, chains or no. How sweet the sound. So in keeping with the Angola theme, I'm sort of doing prisons tonight, I don't know why. I worked in a few prisons. I was a volunteer leading poetry workshops in several prisons around the country, not actually in Angola, but in others, men's facilities. And anyway, I've had sort of an interest in our country's incarceration policies. And so I went to Louisiana State Penitentiary, Angola, which has a visitor center, a museum, which is very odd in itself, right? That there would be sort of prison tourism. But in that visitor center, there's a series of photographs that I thought were really interesting from 1997, when the Mississippi was breaching its banks, and it was flooding and threatening the prison, which sits on the banks. So what the prison decided to do was to let the inmates out, unshackle them, and get them to sandbag the levees to preserve the institution, which I thought was, a uniquely difficult position for those inmates to be in, right? Because you'd be a little conflicted about what you wanted to have happen, right? So this is sort of a meditation on that instance, sandbagging, and on sort of hard labor in general, those practices, sandbagging. To highway road, to rock build, to tree split, fence string, hammer, prisoner porter, prisoner freight, to hammer, to hammer. You hold bags open, you funnel the sand. You tie them closed and load here to the truck bed. Prisoner faithful, prison of storms. To harbor and winnow, to salvage. Your mother's unmothered, you bolster. The warden says fill, and you fill it. The river says break, and you still it. And I'll end with this, a poem that I rarely read. I never read it, actually. I don't think I've ever read it in front of an audience, because it's, well, I don't know why. It's longer, it's a little more involved, but it seemed to sort of fit tonight, and also it felt appropriate after our sort of national discussion about Troy Davis and the other execution that happened at the same time, Lawrence Russell Brewer, that didn't get talked about as much, but it's a difficult thing for a country to be in the business of killing people, and It's something we need to be thinking about, I think. So this is a poem called On the Morning of Blank's Execution. I've left a sort of underlined blank for the name. On the morning of Blank's execution. Could there be 1 minute more of singing anywhere over the whole dry earth this morning? Angola is a giant mousetrap, inescapable, the warden says, with 4 clamps in the 4 directions. Quote, something always gets 'em, heat stroke, gator, snake bite, a bullet. The best thing I know to ask for is 1 minute. And what would that do? When Jay held me in his dark room with the door closed 1 minute more, what did it accomplish? Who was less wounded because our bodies met? Still, all the protests beg that stay. Only stay. There was a night in another country when a woman called to the man who could not be her husband and brought him to her bed. She was already beginning to show. She would drown herself in the well come dawn. But that night, her lips like a small bowl, her manner polite till the last, that night she brushed her swollen fingers from the high bone of his foot up the legs. She wrote a log of the body through the vessel of the body. I am inventing what happened in her bed out of a protester's need for rupture, that to add 1 minute might change the larger course of time, might lead that man, even now being strapped in those crossed leather straps to the chair, even now being readied to clasp his body to its planes in the final heaves. In some 5th direction, out of the jungle, off the prison grounds named for another country. This trap might be our mistake, someone's belief in the narrow options of a compass, in heat stroke. And what beyond the last degree? Another minute. A story is not the way to end a story that tries to unstrap a man from a chair. A story leaves him listening, bound. But all I can offer is what I imagine of that low bed where the woman had mashed honeysuckle into the sheets, where she led her love by his solid hand, he who would never tell. Or, if you'd rather, I'll end with a story I myself lay down to, with my own lover, night after night, not because I believed in its narrative, but because everyone outside wanted to kill something. And if I stayed in here, if I stayed with you, Jay, perhaps I would not. Thank you.